This video is about the 10th commandment, which I will now share with you on my screen. I'll read it. The 10th commandment. You shall not covet your neighbor's spouse or servants, helpers or creatures, or anything else that is theirs. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not woo and wheedle away from our neighbors, their spouse or servants, helpers or creatures, or alienate and estrange them, but deter them from desertion so they remain and maintain their responsibilities. So you'll notice this is the longest commandment we've had of all, and it's more inclusive. The 9th commandment said house, it really meant all possessions. Here in the 10th commandment, we're talking about all the living things that have a relationship to our neighbor. So first of all, our neighbor's spouse, then servants, which was probably simply a synonym for employees in Luther's time, helpers, and creatures. In the Old Testament, this says donkey and oxen, which of course are used in farm work. Not many modern people now have donkey and oxen, at least not in Japan, but maybe a dog or cat would be an appropriate analog here. But then finally, this last sentence just throws it all in. Anything else that is theirs, anything that is your neighbor's, you are forbidden from coveting. We have the standard question, what does this mean? We have the introduction, we should fear and love God so that we do not. And then here are the things we are not supposed to do. Woo and wheedle away. So this is not as straightforward as just stealing. Few people are going to simply kidnap their neighbor's spouse. But there are ways of trying to make your neighbor's spouse break loyalty to your neighbor and come and try to prefer you instead. That is forbidden. Same thing for the servants, helpers, and creatures, or anything you do to put a block between your neighbor and the people he is in his closest relationships with, or that she is in her closest relationships with. No, by contrast, when you see that there is especially a strain within a family or a work relationship, your job is to encourage them not to desert or run out on each other, but find ways to work it out so they can stay together and keep their responsibilities to one another. So again, as I mentioned in the 9th commandment video, these last 2 commandments regarding coveting are really bringing us back to the beginning again, because they're addressing what goes on in our hearts, what we want above all things. If we want something that our neighbor has above all things, then the loss of it is what we fear above all things. We don't actually fear God. If we think that this thing that our neighbor has will make us happier than anything else, then we are trusting it to give us what we need. We are not trusting in God to provide what he has in store for us. And certainly if we are so consumed with coveting, loving God is not the primary thing in our lives. So these commandments ending with what goes on in the heart point us back to the beginning. It's kind of like the 10 commandments make a golden ring. The first one leads you back all the way through to the end, but then the 10th one points you towards the beginning again. What you need above all else is to keep the first commandment of fearing, loving, and trusting in God above all things, and then all the other 9 will fall into place. The final video in the series will be on the summation of the commandments.